I suppose the first thing is what are your key agenda items at the moment? What's the key drivers for your business? What are you being judged on? Let's start with you, Carol, because actually you're relatively new to the sector, and let's face it, Stonegate's been going through its changes anyway. You've taken over the managed house sector, which is a pretty big business on its own. So for you, I mean, what are your key objectives? What have you been tasked to do, and are they changing?
Sure, you're right. So I am 8 months into Stonegate, to my role and to the industry. So, you know, a real stalwart of knowledge sat with you now. But I think in terms of what we're focused on, it hasn't changed based on the fact that, you know, a lot of the things that we are focused on, you know, pivots around how we elevate our guest experience, around how we position every one of our sites for success, making sure we've got the right venue in the right location, and making sure that we are really focusing on our team who make the difference. And those are things that have been part of our journey for the last sort of, you know, couple of years, or certainly sort of since, you know, David McDowell came in and set this sort of strategy. Now, naturally, what we need to do is think about how do we focus on those, and how do we sort of maybe lean into them in a slightly different way, and how do we focus on making sure that our operational efficiencies and everything really tie into that. But those remain our sort of focuses, and we haven't changed that based on the last.
Is there a sense that the pub still remains very much as it is? Have you an essence of what the pub is? Because obviously what you're talking about is making it more efficient,
yeah,
and making money out of it. Obviously we've got challenges to that, but I suppose I'm interested to see, you know, you coming in, you know, how do you see the pub? I mean, in a sense, everybody knows what a pub is, or do they until you start running it one?
Yeah, I mean, I can only talk about it from my sort of perspective of coming into the industry, and, you know, I'm talking to a room full of people who know all of this already, but the things that have surprised me most is the absolute quality of people that we have, whether it be in, you know, serving frontline, the support teams that support everybody around the businesses, around, you know, the sort of leadership that sort of looks after multi-site, and that's really who we need to continue to sort of lean into and support and make sure we're investing in. In terms of the other thing that really surprised me is just that role of the pub, as you said, you know, the sort of fact that it's so part of the community that we operate within. It's part of the social fabric of what we do. And, you know, as a retailer coming in, that has been something that I think we've got to stay really true to, and make sure that we don't just go to the route of cost pressures, so let's go and find efficiencies and productivity, and sort of like engineer the passion that those teams that I was talking about have got for, you know, being part of those communities and serving people. And then the third thing is, and again, it sounds really silly when you're talking to a room full of people that have worked, you know, in the industry for a lot longer, but in retail, we would have really been focused on, we've got to, yes, welcome customers in and serve them and transact with them and let them go out and really quickly get on with their lives because they're busy. The difference for me that sort of smacked me right in the face was that fact that what we are doing is, yes, we're welcoming guests in, but we are not just about the service, we're serving them, and they are sharing in their experiences. They're choosing to come to us to spend their time and their money with us. And therefore, that element on the value for that experience is something, again, that we just can't go down the route of not, you know, remembering that that's what we're there for.
Yeah, that fundamental difference between retail. Roy, Mission Mars, incredibly successful. And it's not just Albert Schloss, you've got Rudy's as well, so you've got a, you know, growing pizza business, growing Albert Schloss business here in London. Have those objectives are really, seems to be growth has been the top of your agenda. Is it still there, or how are you looking at things, particularly as, obviously, you know, the environment is potentially changing. It has changed.
Okay, so our priorities are probably number one, team engagement. So we've worked really hard on that for the last 3 years since COVID. We saw it as the essential thing to do coming out of COVID when there was so much uncertainty with team members. So that is still a very high priority, and we've now got our team turnover down from about 120% to about 50%. So we put a lot of effort into that. Guest experience is probably focus number two, biggest focus. We get a lot of data from Feed It Back and a lot of other sources. We are now trying to work out, rather than sweating over that data, can we use AI to get a bit more incisive and decisive about incisive about the data and then decisive about what we do about it. And then we're trying to, grow our business, so add to the size of our estate, but also grow our revenues at a faster pace than inflation can throw at us. That's our key priority.
So how much is that focus between looking at new sites and actually really maximising revenue potential in what you've already got?
In the case of Rudy's, I would say it's probably 50-50. In the case of Schloss, it's much more about working with the assets that we've got.
Yeah.
I think now that we've opened London, 18, 20 weeks ago, we're going to settle with this for probably the next at least 12 months and try and just ensure that London gets up to speed successfully. But in terms of Rudy's, I think we'll probably open 8, 10, maybe 12 in the next 12 months. And
last question, has that changed in the last couple of weeks? As it were?
In the last couple of weeks? No, not really. Not really. We'd baked in 10% on employment costs for hourly paid. We thought that was going to come down the track from minimum wage, or one way or another. It hasn't come through minimum wage. We bit the bullet on really young employees quite a long time ago, so everybody gets paid the same, hourly paid people in our business. Nobody's on the minimum wage, everybody's on national living, the real living wage. So we'd expected another 10%. We didn't get it the way we thought we were going to, but we've got it anyway. Okay. So we will probably do as we did last year. We traded really well in the first half and built up a buffer against our budget. And that allowed us to almost release some of that buffer and therefore not put the entire cost of those inflationary increases through come April. So we probably put about 2% on our prices and swallowed the rest, and then we sort of released the buffer that we built up in the first 6 months, and we hope, certainly the first 2 months of trade for us has been similar to last year, so we're ahead of budget, and we hope to continue doing that up until April. We'll make our decisions, really close to the wire, and if we feel we can avoid putting too much price in, we will, and we will allow hopefully some buffer to unravel in the second half.
Laura, in terms of Caravan, you've been growing, opened in Manchester, and also the coffee business is growing as well. So again, similar question. Here you are, 3 founders all in a room here, at board level. Your chair's here as well. I mean, what is the conversation at board level? Has it changed, or what is the focus? Are you still got a sharp focus?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had a very sharp focus over the last certainly couple of years on running the business much more through the spreadsheet to make sure that we're much more commercially successful business. And I think now we're kind of changing that conversation internally to not run the business through the spreadsheet. And I was at another thing the other day with Jeremy King, and he was saying there was a difference between, being a restaurateur and a restaurant owner. The restaurant owner running from the boardroom and a restaurateur, running from the floor. And I think as a business, we're really focused on going back to basics. We've just launched a new initiative called Just Brew It, which is launched it 6 months ago, which is an initiative to really go back to the fundamentals of steps of service and customer experience and how we're delivering hospitality at a site level and being much more present rather than sort of running it through the boardroom. Obviously, we're all doing the same things in this room. We're looking at top-line sales, labour maximisation, incremental gains on margins, and where we can, make sure that we're. In fact, we've got a number of budget mitigation strategy sessions as my current number one invite on meetings at the moment. So I think we're trying to peel that back. We've got to a place, and I feel lucky, in fact, that was what we were focusing on as a business for the last couple of years, because we're commercially in a good place, but we want to actually make sure that we're delivering a great customer experience and a great experience for our teams.
Will that give you? Probably know the answer to this. Will that give you think, a real commercial advantage, a competitive advantage against the rest of the market by actually really upping what Caravan's all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think maintaining is something that we talk about a lot, is maintaining standards, maintaining service levels, maintaining team retention, et cetera, and, our focus is very much that, that's not enough, and, you have to continue to innovate, you've got to continue to try and stay ahead, and be the best version of yourself as well. Ultimately, I don't necessarily see us as competing with everybody else. It's just more that, we've got the fundamentals of our business and we want to be the best version of that.
Quick before we move on about the coffee business as well, because that's moved on. You can, I can walk out of Euston Station, turn right, and there's a Caravan. I can pick up a cup of Caravan coffee now on the way to Euston Square Tube Station. It's very handy. Thank you very much. But in terms of that business, how is that growing? Because most people see Caravan as the restaurants. That's core. But do you see this as a really important and potentially big part of your business, coffee business?
Yeah, we founded both businesses at the same time in 2010 with a little coffee roaster in the basement of our Exmouth Market restaurant. It remains a very important part of the business. It's sort of symbiotic with what we do. We have very organically grown it until about 4 or 5 years ago, where we've made a much more sort of concerted sales effort as a team, and we're seeing, brilliant growth within that. We've just launched in Waitrose, Ocado. We've got our own D2C channel, and we definitely see it as a growing and fantastic part of the business. So we'll continue to do so.
Yeah. Al, you've got a big business. Stonegate's a big business. You've got a big business with Burger King. You run the numbers on the back of the budget in particular. So, what's Burger King looking like, and what are you looking like? Is it changing what you're about?
Clearly it is changing what we do. But I think first of all, what I'd say is we are very, very focused on trying to drive sales. Yeah. And I don't think that's changed from 2 weeks ago to the mitigation sessions we're all endlessly sitting in. But we, post-COVID, we got our P&L really tight, and I'm talking about the store level. We have very tight overhead as well. So we're very, very well controlled within what we can control, is how I would describe it. So I think we are perhaps counterintuitive, and rather than trying to drive labour productivity much further, we've done a huge amount of work on labour productivity, and our productivity is probably 20% better on whichever measure you want to look at than it was 2 years ago. So that's quite good. So what we are trying to do is just drive sales. So I would say what we're going to try and do is we will probably open more restaurants for longer rather than going at it. So I think we'll mitigate in a different way, because perhaps it's much easier to know how to make a Whopper than it is to make one of Caravan's great dishes. So therefore, we know how to do that. Our job is doing that in 300 restaurants. And so, I think I look at our challenge being different. How do we remain small? How do we empower our people to make those decisions on a local level, to try and grab the sales, to open half an hour early or shut an hour later, or have better service, or whatever it is to drive those sales? So I kind of see our problem as, like that, really.
So basically, you're about scale, so you're using scale. And also, if you've got an asset, i.e. a site, you're going to sweat that as much as possible then, rather than contract, which we've seen in other parts of the market.
My own view long-term about contraction is that you're never going to save your way to a fortune. It's a very obvious thing to say, and it's much easier for me to do than others. But I think you need to look at your business, work out what you're going to sell or trade slightly differently in those extra hours. That's what we will do, or we are doing. So I think that is really what we will and what we are trying to go after. And if I was to shed a positive light for everyone here, what I would say is that, just as James Pomeroy was saying earlier today, we feel that we as QSR perhaps, and you could ask Simon Wallace as well, we perhaps go into these kind of recessionary times earlier and we come out earlier. And what I would say is that we're perhaps coming out now, and I think that is the benefit of what we're seeing with younger people, as minimum wage has gone up 50% since 2018, and I think we're seeing the benefit a bit of that, and I would hope that the whole of our sector sat here in this room should begin to see that come Easter, May next year. Would be my, if I'm being optimistic, and let's be optimistic before everyone goes for a pint.
Well, there's plenty of that outside. A couple of things I want to pick up with all of you. Let's talk about the people thing, and actually continue you, Al, for a minute, and talk about what have you done over these last 2 years to actually improve productivity? Because that's a key thing. You know, we all employ, I mean, perhaps people look at Burger King, you perhaps don't employ as many because, you know, perhaps more automated, but we'll come on to the automation in a minute. But, okay, how have you managed to improve productivity?
Again, you know, it is easier for us. It is much easier for us than other businesses because the products that we make are quite well defined and quite relatively easy to make and then to replicate. So the skills required to do that and the time taken to do that, all of that thing, it can be worked out. But we really did it in COVID when, as we were coming out of COVID, we worked with Force. And then we've done a lot of joint development ourselves. Our finance team, Tim is here, our CFO, and our finance team and our operations team have worked really closely. And year in, year out, we're just squeezing that a little bit. And ultimately, you do it by, you know, I can't remember who was saying earlier about taking some of the people who perhaps were big blockers and driving that to them, and then, you know, automating your schedules, automating stuff. It does work. It certainly works for a business like ours, and getting people to be a convert and showing them the benefit of that and getting them to pull for it. I think getting the operators to pull for something is the key battle. And in our world, technology works, that AI works, and it's just using it in a way that makes your life easy, everyone's life easier. And that has a big benefit. And I still think we can tweak that a little bit. Yeah. And the other advantage I think we have, therefore, if our productivity is good, the opportunity we would have is that we will take less price than other people in the sector will. Well, that's what I hope we do. Yeah. And no one really in our end of the market, you're not going to get more customers by putting your prices up more. You know, there are twice as many people wanting to eat under 10 quid than eating over 10 quid.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Carol, from your point of view, because, I mean, you know, as you said, you come from that retail environment, and you can probably see where productivity can change. Is productivity something you actually talk about? I mean, you talked a lot about the people and how important they are. And, you know, it's about what return you get, but also that balance between keeping them happy so you don't have to keep hiring, you keep retention. So how are you seeing that evolving? And are there lessons from retail for you? I mean, you said quite seriously it's different, but... Yeah,
I mean, it's different, but there's so many similarities because ultimately it is a people business, and we need to be sort of looking at how we are sort of making sure our retention's there, making sure that we aren't wasting money by having high turnover and having to retrain. But from that productivity side of things, it's about how do we give our teams the real fundamental skills that allows them to be as productive as possible. And like I was saying, it's like, how do we sort of empower them to sort of be able to sort of make those local decisions about this is the best way to do this, whilst giving them as much central support as possible. And I think, it's definitely more challenging than I've seen in some of the retail spaces where, there's just such a more fundamental, like, here's all of the tools and technology and everything like that, that was, a gun to go and scan the shelf to tell you where to put the next product. Yeah. It's not quite the same as tell me, how quickly to serve the next guest, or tell me how quickly to do that. So there's definitely things that we can learn from it, but the fundamental still comes back to how are we giving the teams the right skills. Yeah.
What are those skills and tools? What are the tools? Because you mentioned, you touched on technology there, developing people, training. I mean, what are those tools and how are you developing them? What works?
I mean, there's lots of sort of different areas. I think the fundamental is, that colleague to colleague sort of how we share knowledge is still so really important. And so from a point of view of the skills that we're looking at the moment is how do we find that consistency and that quality in our drinks, in our food. And you put the slides up earlier saying that's how fundamental that is to what the guest is looking for. So we're spending quite a bit of time in terms of how do we do that, both from a passing knowledge and also how do we bring in maybe some sort of digital aspects of that yet to be worked through.
Yeah, I mean, Laura, from your point of view as well, you've got great teams in yours, and that is fundamentally what Caravan's about. But are you looking at getting more out of them? Are you giving them more? I mean, how do you develop that team and keep and develop that culture?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you didn't ask me about too much specifics with regards to technology and labour optimisation. Caravan's definitely not winning any awards for that, but and we've got work to do on that as well. And I think that is the silver lining with a lot of this, is the reprioritisation of the business.
Yeah.
We're definitely looking at using tech a lot more to look at labour productivity. There's lots of work we can do there, but we've definitely sort of, I guess, had an inverse approach to our people and our teams, and that is very much focusing on culture from day one. We proudly B Corp, and that's been a massive push for the business, and is really fantastic from a sustainability perspective for team retention, and likewise we really are hugely big on EDI and promoting everyone to sort of be themselves or welcome's one of our key values as a business, and so we're very much focused, I guess, on the culture and retaining people via having a fun and engaging and wonderful work environment.
Yeah.
But we do need to do the work on the tech as well.
Yeah, fine.
Don't be Jane.
Yeah. Roy, I obviously name-checked you earlier about actually you were one of the first companies to start, quoting retention levels as well. So obviously it's something you're proud of, and you touched on that already. But what does increasing productivity look like in Mission Mars, and do you talk about in those terms?
Yeah, on a weekly basis, we'll talk in our exec meetings about team turnover. But I guess after COVID, we made a big strategic bet that if we could drive down turnover pretty significantly, we would be able to, efficiencies, but also growth for our brands in terms of their reputation, and also like-for-like sales. So we've been really closely watching what happens when we improve every aspect of what we do with our people. So that's training. So we spent, I think, about £250,000 last year, or the back end of last year, on training over 200 people in the Train the Trainer course. It was really interesting when we surveyed the key people who would be delivering training in our business. We found out less than 1% had actually been trained to deliver training formally.
Right, okay.
So we created our own course, rolled that out in our own academy, which we built 2 years ago, and we're able to roll that out to over 200 people in our business who every single day it's their job to train somebody. So the strategic bet was that if we invest not in our people, that we in rates of pay, in bonus schemes, in this kind of great cultural things you're talking about, parties and fantastic inductions, and we train them better and we create more impressive career pathways. So for example, in Rudy's, whereas we used to have 4 steps from the kitchen, from, I guess, the bottom level to the top level, there's now 7 different levels. So there's opportunities for us to train you, for you to be trained, to learn new skills, to be paid more money, to have the feel-good factor of being promoted. So those kind of changes have happened in our business, but we've got to closely watch that and make sure that delivers like-for-like sales. Yeah. So we've had almost 3 years of double-digit like-for-like sales in Rudy's, so ranging from 12 to 14 to 15% like-for-like sales now this year.
Yeah.
And the same if we take Albert Schloss, we're getting 7, 8, 10, 5% this year like-for-like sales growth. So we can only do all of those things if we're keeping a really close eye on, are they actually working? And team turnover has gone from over 100% to 50% at the moment.
Which is impressive. Definitely.
Which is, it's hard work. I mean, it's hard work to get
Well, exactly. It's easy, but it pays off.
But you can only do it if you can only do it if you can afford. You've got to be able to afford to do it.
Which is the thing, yeah.
So we reckon a kind of rough, now historically looking back with the benefit of hindsight, we reckon about a 10% reduction in turnover adds about 0.5 point to our margin, to our profitability. Yeah. Now, we don't keep that. We use that to invest back in our people, whether it's through bonuses or training, whatever that might be. So we're not benefiting it directly as shareholders, as owners of the business, but what we are doing is we're getting way beyond industry average like-for-like sales, which if we didn't have those, we would be a whole lot less successful than we are.
Yeah. Okay, let's open it up. Any questions for our panel at the moment? We'll start earlier on, just tacking it on the back. Anything you've heard you want to... We've got one over here. Good, I missed that. Thank you. Well spotted. Can you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Hello. My name's Eric Tiv from Crunch Time. Just a question for the panel. We've heard a lot about tech in the restaurant business today. With all this different data streaming in, obviously a lot of restaurant organisations are looking to decipher that, and there's an awful lot coming in. So what are your, how do you do that, and what are your priorities? What are the challenges that you're looking to solve with that?
Yeah. Al, do you want to take that in terms of, I suppose it is what data do you need and what's it telling you?
Well, you certainly get more data than you need. I think we all do that. We would use, now I think we're pretty clear on where we want to go on our digital path, but as per the innovation session earlier, I think you've got to get your digital stack or your tech, whatever it is, into a position to be able to do something with it. We are on a journey whereby we will, within 18 months, we'll be all of our, not all, but the very large part of our marketing will be personalised to you or to your cohort. So that is quite a big journey that we're on to go towards that. So, and we're quite clear on that. We can now measure our returns. To Ian Edwards' earlier point, we can certainly measure our returns on where we're spending the money or in terms of our media. So we're using our data to understand the customers more, understand what they want, but also understand what they don't want, and target that message much sharper. And we are doing that, and our loyalty scheme is allowing us to get along there. So it is more than purely what it perhaps is used for now, which is more of a sort of discounting type of app, and that's the journey that we're definitely on. I don't think we have all the answers, but we're on that way. But we'll use a lot of AI too as we go forward. So how are we using AI? We'll use AI in our kiosks. So when you have A with A, very simplistically, you're more likely to buy B. So that's fairly simple, but we're just about on a test. And I see this as the future. Within 2-3 years, I'd imagine all our drive-thrus will be driven by AI. And we're just on the very front end of that. Tech's not ready, but it will be. And so that's where we're going with our data.
Yeah. I mean, Carol, pick up, because, obviously retail, data heavy. People would argue way ahead of us. But in terms of coming back to this new environment for you, again, picking up that question, what are the key data points? And particularly picking up what Al's saying, how is that analysis using AI going to change things?
I'll first of all say that I'm not the authority on AI, but it's a journey that we're definitely on in terms of that sort of analysis. I think one of the things that we've got from a data point is we have been on this journey with our Mixer digital sort of strategy. So we've got our Mixer app, which is our loyalty app and our interface of how we are connecting our guests and our team to our venues and to sort of experiences and personalisation. And then the other angle of that is the ability to sort of utilise that with our branded partners across like 4,500 screens. I think our marketing directors in the room will correct me if I'm wrong, up and down the country. And that obviously gives us real-time insight from our guests from a behavioural point of view and from a what they are spending on, and how we then bring that in with all the other data that we're getting is really key. And that's something that retail's done for a long time. It's had that sort of digital network, and it's had that ability to pull it together. But for us, we're just scratching the surface of it. I think the best thing is we've done a really great job of bringing all of that in the last sort of year. But how we now bring that together with the AI is something that we're just sort of on the journey of. Yeah.
I mean, Roy, we talked before. I mean, you were saying when we're actually doing the briefing for this panel about how you see personalisation is really will become more and more important, getting that real data on consumers. Is that the sort of data you think is most valuable?
It's definitely what James Newman is thinking is very valuable in our business. He's our sales and marketing director, and he tells me with the new system that we've actually a plug for Access. It's a Trimo. So their system is being installed, and we will now, apparently we are able to be very much more bespoke around the way we introduce campaigns or ideas to our guests. I'm not a big fan of bombarding guests, so I'm a big fan of, if we can target with kind of just interesting, exciting things that they're likely to make them smile or make them love Rudy's or Albert a bit more than they currently do. But I think the biggest one for data for us is probably using AI to really delve into all of the guest feedback we get. tens of thousands of pieces of data every period. And it's quite a slog to analyze that data on a side-by-side basis and see what the real message is and what do we need to fix. We talk about it for an hour every single Monday as an exec team. All the Schlosser and Rudy's, they talk every single day about the feedback they get, but there's a lot of work goes into trying to sort the wheat from the chaff, and I think AI we believe, able to help us sort the wheat from the chaff in terms of identifying what it is that guests are peeved about and what they would like to see us do differently, so that the teams can be empowered to make the decisions and make the changes that will affect the guest experience.
Because Laura, I mean, you said earlier that tech doesn't play obviously a big part, but if you were looking forward, I mean, what are the challenges in the business which more data you think might solve? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, I definitely think labour productivity is a huge one, but also when we're talking about sales, using the data that we have a number of apps that we're trialling at the moment for pay at table, order at table, etc. And the data that you get from that is certainly really useful as far as aligning what customers want and what goes with what, and all the rest. So I think from our perspective, that's certainly an area that we'll be wanting to look into. But I think the thing with data is we all want more and more and more of it, as Al said. But it's how you use it, and it's the decisions that it perhaps helps inform you to make as a business. That's the most important thing, and the most valuable, I think, is not getting data overload, but actually using it for good decision making. Yeah.
Any more questions we got?
I really liked what Sarah said earlier in terms of that sort of gut thing as well. I think that there's a real sort of need to be sort of data.
I love that too.
It's a great point, because it's like being sort of data-led but human-centric. I think is ultimately what we need to continue.
Yeah, because that is the thing. We talk about it is people business. We've talked a lot about tech. We've talked a lot about analysis, which is important because we know that's going to change stuff. But how much is that sort of that experience you've got? And Cara, I mean, you may not have much time in the pub industry if you've got massive experience of retail. I mean, even in retail, how much is gut, how much is data? Or perhaps you are going to be depending on the experience and, gut reactions of your team a lot more than you perhaps did in retail.
As in me personally, how much is gut and how much is data?
No. I mean, how much did you use that in retail? But if you're into this market, how much are you going to rely on your teams?
Look, I think ultimately the data gets you so far. And you're then the human sort of centric part of it then takes you the rest of the way, or the human centric, I think similar to the point that was made earlier, is it gets you to be curious about something, then the data really hones you in on that, and that's no different whatever industry you're in. It's making sure that you listen to the teams around you as well, because actually the truth so often is in the sites, the real fundamental of like, what does that actually mean? And you can get lost in the averages of the data sometimes if you're only focused on that. Yeah,
because look, I mean, I ended my little presentation as well, reminding us all that, what business we're in. We're in the happiness business. People hate being miserable, and we can all go around being miserable ourselves. But okay, that takes us back to the consumer guys. I mean, what does consumers want? What changes are you seeing? What's really exciting consumers out there? Al, I mean, coming into Burger King, what's setting you apart? What are your customers telling you they want? And not necessarily from data, but what do you think they want?
I mean, I think if you go into QSR and you think, well, I'm just going to have, it's just all about price, I think you're very much mistaken. If you play a price game, you're just going to end up in a price war with McDonald's, which you are undoubtedly going to lose. Yeah. Look how much that's hurt them over the last year or so. So I think what you have to, really think on is, as Laura was saying, what are you going to stand for? What are you good at? What we try to do from a value point of view is we're trying to offer value. We're trying to offer abundant value. So and what we've seen over the last 2 years is, particularly the last 18 months, is really what customers and consumers are eating is spreading, so there's very much less in the middle, and we've got more the value end. If we look at the products that we're selling, more at $2.99, $3.99, $4.99, and then also we're winning share hand over fist from the better burger operators on delivery. And why are we doing that? Because we are price competitive at that, at that level, and you'll be paying, 60% of what you would be there, and we're offering something which is very similar and very aspirational. So we're seeing our market splitting from a gourmet end to a more value-led. So I think going back to your question, I think you've got to focus on what you do well, what are you going to stand for, and don't try and chase someone else. I think that's death.
Yeah. Laura, what's making your customers happy? How are you making them happy? I always have a good time I get a Caravan, but hey.
Thanks, Peter. No, I mean, I think people want fun, right? I mean, like you said before, that's why we're in this industry in the first place, and, they want creativity and innovation. And just tying it back to the budget again, I was reflecting about this the other day. I was reading a statistic that, there are 18% less new independent operators than, a couple of years ago. And I think that really is the tragedy of a budget like what happened a couple of weeks ago is, these are the people coming through that are like the next generation. Like I look around this room, I've been coming to this event for, quite a long time now. And, I want to see those young, innovative, creative businesses coming through. So, the next versions of us. And they are what keep us on our feet as well.
Yeah. And
that's essential part of the ecosystem, exactly. So, and I think people, I love all these, creative, innovative people coming through because they challenge us.
Yeah. I think we've got a question over here.
Hey, just looking at the future, and I know there's going to be early next year a focus on sustainability with Planet Peach, but what are you baking in to your finances for the next year, and has that changed when you heard the budget? When you're looking at sustainability, obviously, Laura, I know you're B Corp, but when you're looking at the future, I just really wonder what impacts you're thinking about when it comes to sustainability on your businesses, be it positive or negative.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to take that, Laura, because you just got
sure.
name-checked.
I think it's an interesting point because baking in becomes more and more challenging when you're faced with a budget like that, right? It shifts the priorities of the business. It kind of segues back into what I said at the start about running the business as a spreadsheet. It is difficult, I think, when you are faced with such a massive lob off your bottom line to then say, right, remember your values. It is about diversity. It is about sustainability. These are things that are really important to us as a business. So baking in things to the P&L becomes harder and harder. And I think, we're all, like I said before, trying to be the best version of ourselves. So it's not great, I don't think, when you're refocusing the business over to just mitigation. That said, it's a hugely important part of Caravan, and always has been from day one, from using like recycled everything to, all of the measures that we are now measuring ourselves against with B Corp. Yeah. So it might not be baking in, but it is certainly, not becoming any less of a priority for us at Caravan anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Carol, do you want to pick that up in terms of, the pub sector, in terms of sustainability, and probably taking it on down to the supply chain? I mean, what are your priorities in that area, and how important is it?
Yeah, I mean, you articulated it earlier in terms of the reasons it's important is because our guests are telling us, our team are telling us, and the one thing I would say is that we are really sort of quite early on our journey with that, and so we went out to the teams recently and said, look, this is something we really want to go after, this is something we really want to have your input into, and that's not changed, but of course we need to, as Laura said, sort of stand back and go, what does that look like? And I can't talk with the same sort of experience that some of my colleagues could in terms of what we're doing in the supply chain, but we've been working really closely on how we make sure that we've got less weight going into things, how we're looking at bottles and all the rest of it. And, none of that is changing, but how we think about baking things in is something different.
I mean, Roy, you want to pick up? I mean, is sustainability becoming, as we saw there, not just the right thing to do, but actually have some real business objectives? Yeah,
it's a must. We've got a director of sustainability. He's doing a great job. The teams demand it. And pretty much everything I see, I guess it's in the word, isn't it? Sustainability. It tends to, you have less wastage and it costs you less. It's about reducing consumption. So almost everything that we implement tends to save us money. It might have some sort of upfront capex cost, but generally speaking, I think it saves money. It makes a small net contribution to the business.
Al, obviously you've got a CFO who is heavily involved as the industry's representative, really, and champion on sustainability, and he's looking at you now. So what's your view?
Yeah, I think we try and put sustainability at the heart of everything we do, but there are challenges, as Laura was saying. So, I can give you a real life example. We've signed up and to the Better Chicken commitment, and there are commitments along that line. And next year, those, towards the end of next year, those comes with quite big costs, and you have to, you committed to doing it. We're going to lean in, and we can't then turn against our values. So I think you have that. But one of the problems that we have, and as a large organisation we have this, but smaller organisations don't have the resources that we do. That, we've looked at it, and I think we've got about 30 pieces of environmental legislation coming in. And I know Tim was talking to the DEFRA guys the last couple of weeks, just going, do you have any idea what you're going to make us do? And lots of this kind of legislation, be that packaging or in terms of sourcing, is arguing against each other. And the other issue with it is that on a macroeconomic level, it's great and it is the right thing to do and we want to do it, but actually it's ill thought out and the law is passed badly and they don't actually know how to implement it, which is why you end up with the ridiculousness of what happened in Scotland, because there's nothing wrong with the deposit return scheme. That's absolutely the right thing to do, but you need to do these things steadily and get them into all of our businesses in the right way, and that's some of the problem with the legislation that is coming at you next year and towards the end of next year.
Yeah. So I suppose it's also, we've seen all the issues today. We've looked at areas you can mitigate, areas you're going to focus on. We've looked at technology. Looking at all that, and we've also seen the confidence levels go down across the sector. But how confident are you then about, each of you, about where you're going to be this time next year? Are you going to be in a good place? And if so, what's going to make you in a good place, Carol?
So, and I think, the key thing is there's lots of things that we wouldn't have chosen to sort of, be the sort of backdrop that we're at the moment. But I think there's also loads of things to be optimistic about. And a few people have said that on the panels today about what's all the things to be optimistic about. And I think for us personally, we are still looking at how we are, taking all of that data, taking all of the information from our guests and working out what is it that we need to do to continue to evolve to meet the needs of how guests are choosing to socialise. And, we've got, some evolution of a couple of formats that we've done in the last sort of couple of weeks that, are really early sort of stages of experimentation, but that's, proving to be sort of something that's definitely going to give us some real interest. We've got a one-site format that we're opening. It's not even a format, it's just a one-site concept that opens up in a couple of weeks' time that is just our sort of toe in the water of how we continue to, learn from, many people in this room about how our guests are changing, and that's going to be really exciting. It's in Leeds. If anybody wants to come to Rita's Beer Hall and Ballroom in Leeds, it's going to be super exciting.
Roy will be there.
Definitely.
Beer Hall.
We've taken lots of good things from some great operators in the industry.
Hey, it's there,
And so I think there's lots of things like that we've just got to continue to find ways. As you said, it's about we're in the business of sort of happiness and connecting people, and actually that's what we've got to sort of continue to stay true to. So
And Roy, obviously London's a big focus for you guys. Going good?
I think we're going to, we've had, similar to the experience of Hawksmoor in the States, we've had pretty much 18 record weeks, which is lovely to see, and it's pretty much going as we'd hoped it would go. I think but the reason I'm very confident and feeling very buoyant and optimistic, I think it's two things. One is we're going to keep focusing on what the guests want, which is really differentiated, expert products in both Albert Schloss, whether it's the alpine food, the amazing entertainment, the really differentiated drinks with amazing heritage, or just being really amongst the best in the world at Neapolitan pizza. And then the other thing is unreasonable hospitality. We're launching very soon quite a big piece of work across every person who works in our business to encourage them to use their own creativity and land some truly unique, memorable hospitality moments for guests every single day. And I think that will, hopefully, it'll power us through to an amazing 2025.
Good. Optimism. And how's Manchester going?
So brilliant. We absolutely love Manchester. Yeah, it's such a great city and we love being there, and lots more exciting plans for Caravan. We're definitely, really looking forward to the next 12 months. I've got two mantras that I just roll around in my head at the moment, and that one of them is optimism isn't optional, it's essential. I've even got my Yes t-shirt on.
Excellent.
That I think is just really important right now. We're in the business of hospitality. Even if the government are doom and gloom, I think it's our responsibility to be optimistic and bring the joy. And the second is turn the walls into doors, which is very relevant right now, and that's certainly what we're doing as a business, and we'll continue to do. And not just the Caravan doors, but all the doors.
Last word, Al. Before we go to the bar.
Yeah, Rikos told me to be short. Yeah, because he likes the bar. If you don't know. I'm pretty optimistic, as I said earlier. I do think, I call the bottom. I do think, sales will be better next year. I think consumers will come out and spend more. We're opening 30 restaurants a year. We're very focused on our teams. I'm very optimistic about the future. I think returns are tricky, but if they're tricky for us, they're tricky for everyone.
Yeah.
So we are all in this together. So I'm with Laura. Let's get out and have a drink.
Definitely.